All right, we're recording. Share screen. Let's see what whiteboard looks like. I'm just gonna play with this real quick. Okay. Mm-hmm.
I don't see anything yet.
No? Okay, let me see if I shared it right. Okay, so let me do share screen. Let me do whiteboard. Does that pop up?
Yep.
Okay, building a friend count. Okay, cool. I like that better. And then we're just gonna work it. Let's see what they think. Oh no.
Gotta switch internet.
Oh no.
My phone, but I think we're good. Welcome, guys. We're just gonna wait a few more minutes and let a few more folks join.
Hello.
Hey, how are you?
Good to see you.
Good to see
And
you
we're
too.
live.
Good to see you too. I
Alive
like
and
the
kicking.
beard. I like the beard. It looks good.
Well, this is my COVID barometer. Once I
Ah,
get my vaccine, then
there you
and I
go.
not only get the barometer off, but I get back my 15 years mindset when I look in the mirror.
Nice, nice. Awesome. How's your wife doing?
She's doing wonderful. She's doing great. This
Amazing.
isolation is exactly what she needed.
Great.
Rest and relaxation. So
It's important,
nothing like a servant at home.
right? Oh, I'm glad to know. Glad to hear she's doing well.
How's your mom doing? Everybody good?
Everybody's good. Yeah, everybody's good. My mom is still my mom.
Yeah.
She's funny. She's funny. Good lady.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started and introduce Lorinda and the center. I'm Sarah from the Center for Social Change, and I'm going to tell you guys a bit about it in case you don't know about us. So we're here today for the Build Your 2021 grant calendar with Lorinda, Director of Grants and Training and founder of Grants Inc. Happy to have her. And for those of you who knew the center before COVID, this is what we would like to do, is get together in person and hold space for newer orgs or groups that were in Miami that needed a space. And we are a hub that amplifies the impact of change makers. And so we still offer some different memberships, from shared offices to dedicated desks, but we also have an ally membership where you can kind of be able to come to some events and have a mailbox and things like that. But we're obviously in the process of reorganizing our working space a bit, given COVID. The programs that we offer our members are org toolkits, such as these, and different wellness programs, from meditation and mental health talks. And so post-COVID, we're virtual like the rest of the world. So we also offer different services if your organization is in need of some help with fiscal management, or fiscal sponsorship. If you are involved with a project that you don't have 501c3 status, please check out our website or email Luli at forsocialchange.org to learn more. And follow us online on Facebook, Instagram, and you can also subscribe to our monthly community newsletter where you can learn more about what we're doing. And with that, I'm going to pass the baton to Lorinda so she can introduce herself to you guys.
Thank you, Sarah. Hi, everyone. It's good to see you. There's some familiar faces on the call, which is great, and some new faces, which is wonderful. It's super nice to meet you. My name is Lorinda, like Sarah said, with Grants Inc. I'm going to give you a very, very brief, so I don't bore you to death, background on myself. I've been a grant writer for about 10 years. My firm, together, we have a team of 5 now. We've grown quite a bit. We've been able to have our nonprofits awarded a pretty good amount of money, around $16 million in the past 5 years, which is great. And we've had, which is more importantly, because of the impact it's created in the community, right? So I come originally from the for-profit background. So I have a lot of concepts and things of that nature related to the for-profit world that I like to bring into the nonprofits, because our mission really is to grow and expand nonprofits and help you stay around longer. So that you can continue to serve the world, because that's really the point here. So a lot of what we do is very practical and is very tactical, and like how you can actually get this going, because a lot of grant writing sometimes tends to be a little bit theory based, or tends to be a little bit more of a vague or broader perspective. I'm all about the nitty gritty, getting how to actually get it done. So what we're going to actually do today is, this is going to be a very different presentation from what I've done in the past. I am not going to lecture. There is no PowerPoint. We are going to talk, we're going to communicate, and we're going to build out a grant calendar together. So if you don't actually have grant opportunities, we're going to pretend and make them, but I'm going to show you all the systems and the tips and the tricks of how we do this. So when we're doing grants, we do grants on 2 sides. The first side is applying for new funds, but we also work on the grant management side, which is when organizations are getting large funds, what they have to do. And what's interesting in the grant writing world is that a lot of people think that it's just application, you submit it, you get the money, and you're done. And that's really not it. If you actually want to be a sustainable organization, if you want to continue to receive funds on a long-term basis, the grant writing, the actual pen to paper, so to speak, is only about 10% of the job. The other 90% of the job has to do with meeting deadlines, creating to-do lists, having sort of like a project management mindset, and there's many tasks that have to be done. So there's a lot of research that also shows that the nonprofits that are growing, the nonprofits that are resilient now, especially considering COVID and all these things that are going on, are the organizations that are able, that understand that grant writing and that whole world is something that has to continue on an ongoing basis. It's not something where you just apply for a grant and you leave it alone. There needs to be consistent activities occurring on a regular basis in order to build out a plan that's going to work. So that's kind of like a strategy tip. So what I'm going to do is, for us to actually start working on this, I'm going to ask that, number one, please keep your videos on if you're able to. Number two, again, this is going to be a working call. So I'm going to call on you, not to make you embarrassed, but so we can chat and communicate a little bit. And then if you're able to get onto your browser, we're going to look at a couple of websites and we're going to start working on this. So if you have an email address to register, there's a free website we're going to use today called notion.co that we're going to play with a little bit. And I'm going to show you our side, how it looks on our side, so you can actually start getting these things together. So to get started, let's go through and start talking to everybody. I would love to meet you all. So if you could tell me your name, and I'll call on you because I can see your names up here. Tell me your name, your organization, and what you hope to get out of this class. So we'll start with Sensei Francisco. Oh, you're muted.
Now unmuted. So hello, my name is Francisco Santander. Since it's just what it's in the thing, but that's what I do. I teach martial arts. I'm an economist by trade, and been in different industries: banking, aerospace, insurance, investment banking, mostly financial, and a lot of it logistical. I found that my biggest passion was martial arts, and how to help and have an impact. It became really the way to figure out how to do this. And I want to build a calendar because as a treasurer of a bank, that's what I did. That's what I really ran on, funding my operation. And it's always, like Lorinda says, an ongoing basis. You don't just get money now and then you hope that's repeated every time. You got to continuing. It's a continuing education basis to find and to apply. So I'm really excited to, again, be with Lorinda because she's a treasure in information and knowledge and experience to really get this going and apply these concepts to our small organization and keep helping.
Awesome. So good to see you, Francisco. Good to see you
Same.
there today. Next, Natalie.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Natalie. I am the Director of Partnerships at Connect Familias, which is a nonprofit organization based in Little Havana in Miami, Florida. So, we work with educational, social, health needs of families. Any family that has a child under the age of 18 is open to our services. I think today I would love to kind of get some ideas on how to put together an efficient and effective grant calendar. There's a lot of opportunities for families and kids for us that we can take advantage to better serve our community. So just having that kind of all in one place makes it a little bit more manageable and easier to look at. So that's why I'm here today.
Great, excellent. So excited to meet you.
Thank you. Likewise.
So we have David with Smart Miami.
Hey everyone, David Capelli and Carlo Mays here, co-founders of Smart Miami. We're a fiscally sponsored project at the Center for Social Change. So we heard about this great event. Through the center, we've seen Lorinda at the center many times. We work on equitable disaster resilient cities, specifically in COVID-19 has been our major focus. And we're here today to learn how to build a better grant calendar and learn how we can go after funding to support the needs and the work of the COVID-19 reset and pandemic.
And just a little plug, we're going to be doing a town hall series starting at the center. It's
going to be the first Friday in February.
Yeah.
So February 5th.
And so what we're doing is we're looking to be that resource for the COVID reset for organizations and entrepreneurs. And so we're looking to be able to work better with major foundations in being able to do that, to do more equitable reset.
Thank you.
Awesome. Good to see you both. So next we have Francisca.
Yeah, hi everyone. So I kind of stumbled into this event and I signed up last minute yesterday. I'm like Lorinda, like you, I'm from the for-profit world.
Okay.
I've worked with Lauren from Social Venture Partners in the past, so you might know her, but always as a sustainability consultant and impact measurement and so forth. And in pre-COVID, I was involved in setting up a working group here in Miami-Dade on food security. And we were thinking about a food policy council and just formalizing all of that, talked to elected officials about that and so on. And somehow it didn't get off the ground for several reasons, but it never kind of left my mind. And so now I'm just researching whether to get back into this. So I'm looking at, and the fiscal sponsorship is really interesting for me, because I'm completely new to the nonprofit world. And I also sent a lot of questions your way through email. So it's basically, I'm starting from scratch. I know how to engage stakeholders, build a sustainability strategy and measure impact, but grant writing is a completely new world to me, and budgeting for a nonprofit and all of that. So yeah, I'm basically a blank slate and a blank canvas, and I'm looking forward to whatever I can soak up today in the lecture.
Awesome. Well, you know, there's a lot of things in the for-profit world that you'll be able to bring into the nonprofit if you decide to go that route. And a lot of these concepts, and it's so interesting because there's a big bridge, it's like a big gap, right, between the for-profit and the nonprofit world. But nonprofits that are sustainable, they run in a lot of ways with the same fundamentals as a for-profit company. And a lot of nonprofits that have no experience in the for-profit world or don't understand some of these business concepts, they miss the mark and they struggle more than they have to. So that's actually a really good place to come in. Of course, with a nonprofit, we're here to serve the community, but still it's a business. And that's something that people are disconnected with. They don't understand it is a business and it needs to run as a business. So
Right.
Concepts related to, you know, project management, you know, marketing, all those things, budgets, right? Like your funding and all that stuff is important. So like with grants in general, you know, this is our funding side, right? This is one of your major funding resources. It's going to be grants. So grant writing is interesting because everybody thinks about the application part of it, but like I said before, it's such a small piece. There's a lot more of other pieces to it, like not missing due dates. So awesome, good to have you here, and hopefully we'll learn something together. So we have our last one. I apologize if I say your name wrong, Pascal.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Pascal Auguste. I'm the executive. That was pretty good, by the way.
Oh, great. Thank you. Yeah, close.
I'm the executive director of Health Education, Prevention, and Promotion. We are a nonprofit that provides, we really started out health education on chronic diseases. I'm a registered nurse and just saw so much of the prevention can help so much. So, you know, and then we've targeted the South Florida minority community. And then, you know, COVID happened, and we really were focusing a lot on this health inequity. So it goes along with, because teaching and getting people empowered and taking care, it goes along with that, but also what is trying to impact, where can we make a difference in this health inequity? And then I saw, it was building your grant calendar, and that's been some of the issue. And even my last board, they like, okay, you know, so we'll get a grant, and we're very small, so we'll be doing the grant, and then like the grant's about to finish, and you hope to get renewed. And so I thought grant calendar, I interpreted that hopefully I will learn, you know, you need to just have this yearly grant movement going through your organization in order to survive. And I love what you said. I've been hearing that over and over. Run your nonprofit as a for-profit, not as a for-profit, but using some of the same ways. And I'm hoping to grow in that sense also.
Awesome. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think you'll enjoy this. You know, like you mentioned, it is a movement. It is motions you have to have all the time. That's a big disconnect. And again, that comes from the for-profit mindset, right? Like grants are not a one-time thing. And, you know, and unfortunately, I'm sure many of us have been in circumstances where a grant is running out. You don't know if it's going to come in. So you're in this gray area that's extremely stressful because number one, you have bills to pay. You have operating costs. You have staff. So what do you do? So the way around that, because like I personally in my personal life and the business as well, we try to avoid chaos, which doesn't always happen, but you try to avoid chaos. And then really what it is taking a step back, and we're really going to start working deadlines and due dates backwards. So it's not like, okay, the grant's due next month. That's when I look at it. Absolutely not. You need to start working on things 6 months, 3 months to 6 months ahead. So it's all about working ahead and really planning your time in a way that makes sense, and also not not getting used to the idea of applying for grants at the last minute, because that's where a lot of people, because people hate grants and I love them, right? So like you're like, I actually was on a call yesterday. How could you love grants? It's like, well, if you can manage your time in such a way that it's not overly stressful and be really realistic about what you can and can't do, and you're consistent, right? Consistently applying and researching and looking for opportunities, it becomes more of like a smooth sailing process within the business and doesn't have to be so stressful. And the other thing too is that I like to communicate too is that in the grant world, there's so much money available, so much money. And I'm going to ask, and if you've been to my classes, you're not allowed to answer the question. For those of you who never have, how much money do you think is available in grant funds on an annual basis in the United States? Let me clarify. What do you think?
Like 230 billion with a B.
230 billion. Any other guesses? Couple more. Francisca, any idea? Not Natalia. Natalie, sorry.
No, it's okay. I was gonna say about 5 billion, but
okay. And Francisca?
Yeah, I would also say less than 230 billion, but I have no idea. Maybe 100.
Okay. So the answer is $900 billion, close to $1 trillion available in funds on an annual basis. Extreme, a lot of money, right? So now with COVID, that number has gone up quite a bit because there's a lot of funding going out. This year alone, we did, as a firm, we did two over $1 million grants. Both were awarded. One was 1.4, one was like right around $1 million. It was just under. There's a lot of money available in grants. So the reason I tell you that is, for one, there's a lot of opportunities. And for number two, we have to kind of step away from the idea of scarcity. And what happens is that as you're doing these grants, a lot of people get really nervous. Oh my gosh, I need to get this grant. No, you don't. If it's not for you, there's another one. Because there are so many opportunities. There are so many, it's unlimited. You can have a staff of 10,000 people applying 24/7 and you would never hit all the grant opportunities that are available. There are unlimited opportunities. So that's one thing to kind of like just breathe and relax a little bit. Because what happens is when we're getting into we have to apply, it's due in a week. What are we going to do? That whole space of stress, we can kind of disconnect from that a little bit, because if it's not this opportunity, it's the next. What we do is when we're working with clients that are like retainer clients that we'll work with on a regular basis, we have very strict policies that they have to sign off on. And that we're working grants, we create a calendar, an internal calendar of due dates and deadlines and all this stuff. And if we get to like a week before and we don't have 80% of it done, then we may very well pass on that opportunity and go to the next, because it's not worth the stress. It's not worth the stress. So something to kind of like throw out there. Okay, so a couple of things before we actually start playing with systems that I wanted to talk about. When you're doing a grant calendar, the whole purpose of a grant calendar is to really look at your entire 1 year to 18 months. So definitely take notes on this. You want to look at your grant opportunities from 12 to 18 months out. Now, one thing I will tell you is that due to COVID and the wildness, craziness of our new world, we're going to be updating your grant calendar as you're doing it. You're going to be updating it more on a regular basis than you would 2 years ago, right? But we want to look at a grant calendar a year to 18 months. Whenever you're finding grant opportunities, you want to look at ones that you're eligible for now, that you'll be eligible for next year, and the ones that you could see yourself applying to in the future. You don't want to just have a very short-sighted focus and only focus on the now, because you're setting yourself up for a lot of stress and for failure. You want to look at things for, within your quarters, so your 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, right? We want to think about grants. And what's really good to do too is to take these opportunities as you find them and break them up and see, because maybe you have an opportunity that comes to you and you say, I'll give you an example. We have somebody recently that wanted to apply to a federal grant with the national, Fish and Wildlife, right? It's because they do coral reef restoration. So the grant opportunity is a great fit. They fit in alignment with the requirements, but they require matching funds, which means that they have to already have cash assets of $250,000 before they can apply for the grant. And that's one of the requirements. So does that mean that we don't apply? No, it means we don't apply now. But we do put that in our strategic plan for a year from now to see if they're able to bring in funding in order to apply for that in the future. So you want to think about things long term, right? There's a resource that I'm actually going to show you right now really quickly. It's called we call it the grant tracker. This is something that we developed. Let me see if I can pull it up. Where are we? I did an update on my computer, and ever since then, she's been misbehaving. But again, because we like to look at things in a long-term basis, not just what we're going to apply to now. So, grant tracker. So let me ask you, does anybody have, how are you doing the grants now while I look up this document? Are you looking only at grants in the short term, or are you kind of looking at grants in the future?
Both. Really trying to look at both short money and long money. Like I said, treasury experience tells me that some things I can apply for now, and the long money is not so much as looking what to apply for or begin with, but to see what, like you said, what will be available. Because I don't know, the new developments have created a lot of new opportunities and grants, and like you said, $900+ billion. There's just a lot of opportunities. The problem is, like Lorinda said, in my experience last year, I stumbled into a grant. It was a granted, but it was a matching grant. So thankfully, we're able to get a good benefactor to give us the matching $10,000 to get the city's $10,000. But then that person, obviously, it just created a bigger problem because we didn't need to have that responsibility or that commitment at that stage. So we're looking only for filtering grants that are cash grants or in-kind services or things like that that do not commit us administratively. Because one of the things, like Lorinda said, is not just finding and applying. Later is all the things that you have to report, so you don't get the money asked back. You want to take these grants and make sure, there's free money, but the free comes with your hard labor to make sure you report everything accurately, and then everything is free if you do that.
Yes, such a good point. Such a good point. So thank you for bringing that up. So when it comes to grants and we're applying for a grant, and again, this has to do with your grant calendar. We're not only thinking about the day that you're submitting the grant, we're also thinking about all the reporting activities that come along with it. So once you receive the grant, let's say you apply on February 1st, maybe you'll hear back February 28th if you're lucky, right? The same month. Then from there, you might get the money starting the following month, right? Let's say in March, right? Let's say your program starts in April. Now, in 6 months from that date, maybe it's your first report that's due. So you have to report to the funder how you use the money. The reports may include program reports. So what did you do with the money? How is your program growing from it? It may also include financial reports. Now you have to get in touch with your finance department and figure out from your finance department how they spent the money, right? Because some of them will request that. Then now you have in another 6 months, the same thing, right? This is just traditional. This is a basic foundation grant. Another 6 months, you have the same thing. You have to report how you use the other 6 months of the funding. Then you have to also report the finances side, right? So program, what did you do? And what I mean by program is what did you accomplish with the grant, right? So by your second 6 months piece, now you're at a place where you should have completed whatever you said you were going to complete. And then you have to do maybe an evaluation. So you have to evaluate your program to see whether or not you were effective or not. And then on top of it, you have to report back to them as well, your finances, where that money went. So you can see what I'm saying, like one grant may have multiple deadlines and due dates. And this is just grants that you receive. When you're getting the grants, it's also a whole nother thing as far as when you're applying. So what I like to do personally is I like to incorporate all of this into one calendar, into one space, into one main place, because otherwise you're going nuts, right? So before we get into looking at a calendar, I want to show you a document that we call the grant tracker that we developed a while ago. Can everybody see this Excel spreadsheet? Okay, so let me move this out of here. So this is something that you can use, or you can replicate, or we can send it to you. Well, this is what we use this for all of our clients. So what we do is we have here all the different foundations, or the grants will be on this side that we are applying to, right? So foundation A, B, C, D. The name of the grant application.
Sorry, Lorinda, can you make it a little bigger?
Oh, sure. Let me see. And if this doesn't work here, I'll try to put it on my other screen. Is that any? Oh,
just a little bit if you can.
Yeah, for sure.
Much better.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So this is something that this is a really cool document. You can create something very similar. Like I said, we could send it to you. We use this with all of our clients, and what it does is it breaks it down by quarters. Quarter 1, 2, 3, 4, and then sometimes we'll go into multi-years as well. right? And as we're doing research, as we're finding grant opportunities, every single one that we're eligible for is going somewhere on this spreadsheet. And the idea is that if it's quarter 1 would mean that it's due in quarter 1 of our current year, quarter 2, 3, 4. The first thing we have a section here for sector, just because we have organizations, some of them are pretty large, and they fund and they provide services in different sectors. But for your organization, you might not have that category. Then you have the name of the foundation, which we like to hyperlink, so you can have a direct link to their website. The name of the grant that you're applying to, because one foundation may have 20 different grants, so you need to know which is the one you're applying to. The name of your project that you have, right? You want to put that there, the website. And then here we have application type, right? So application type has to do with this should be a drop-down box. It has to do with that, what type of application you're submitting. So there are certain circumstances where you're going to apply for a grant, and what's due is an LOI, a letter of intent, just an initial engagement letter, or like a mini proposal that you have to submit. That may be your first step in the engagement. So you want to put that there. The amount that you're requesting, when it's due, it's very important. And then your status, right? And then we have here the amount that you receive, hopefully you receive it. With this grant sheet, I like it because it does show, has all the information in one line that you would need in the process of applying to this grant. It also has the little graph on the top part, which is good for board members, because that way you can kind of just have a sheet. Boom, this is what we're applying to, this is what we have in the pipeline, this is what we're doing. So whenever you have your list of grant opportunities, that, let's say new opportunities that you're going to, you would want to put it into something comparative, something similar to this. Feel free to screenshot it if you want, so you can have a copy. And then again, we break it up. It depends on your organization and how aggressive you are with the grant process, but you can break it up. We like to break it up into quarters, and like I said, multiple years. So let's say you find a grant opportunity, like the one I mentioned, the federal grant, that they're not quite ready for, that didn't get deleted, because what happens too is as you're actively working on grants and looking for them, it's so easy to have an opportunity. You think it's cool. Oh yeah, I'll get back to it another day, and then you lose it because you forget. So number one tip is that any grant that comes your way, any opportunity, a foundation, a funder of interest, you want to document it. And one place you can document it, once you say, okay, we definitely want to go after this one now or in the future, could be on a calendar like this, on a Excel spreadsheet like this. Anybody have any questions about this?
Yeah.
Yes.
I do, Lorinda. Two questions actually. Are most grants given over a 1 year time frame, as you just gave the examples of the 6 month report and then the second 6 month report? Yeah.
I would say most of them, if it's foundation grants, which is like, as far as not the dollar amounts, but as far as how many are available, I would say foundations are usually one year programs. But you have some foundations that do multi-year programs, and the federal government tends to do multi-year programs. So you're averaging, I would say like 80% of grants are for 1 year, and the other 20% are anywhere from 2 to 5 years. So they can be more like long-term. Yeah.
Yeah. And the second question is, the foundations, they usually open the grants at the same time each year, correct? So you can use this calendar for coming years?
Yeah, they usually do, sorry. They usually do. So they'll have their own individual cycles that that you can kind of monitor, and usually they're more or less around their board, like their board meetings throughout the year. Sometimes they're published, sometimes they're not, but once you get to know the funders, and once you get to kind of see what their cycles are, those are things you want to make notes of. And it usually is around the same time. The only time that I've ever seen that they don't follow these calendars is unfortunately due to COVID. Everything changed this year, but like going into 2021, so because we want to talk about our active 2021 grants, right? We're going to see that most of them are starting to kind of fall into alignment. And they tend to do them like usually I would say March and April is a peak month. Like that's the peak time for grant applications to be due. Like the Miami Foundation, their grant is coming out soon. It's going to be coming out soon. A lot of your local foundations will do like March and April. They'll do like May and June, and then they'll have something else at the end of the year. Yeah. Any other questions?
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is there any, because mostly it's different between push and pull notification, in the sense that, yeah, we got to look and search for grants, but are there any apps or any organizations or foundations that actually do a push calendar? Look, like you just said, Miami Foundation is coming out with a grant next week. I wouldn't have found out if I hadn't been for like newsletters, like the center's newsletters or other newsletters that tell you grants, but you got to really research and like find it in the weeds. It's not like a grants calendar for local regional, federal, etc., that you can look and say, okay, these grants are coming up. There's just such a multitude of resources that makes it very laborious to really be effective.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And that's one of the biggest complaints. And it's honestly, it makes sense. It's so difficult because I move you guys over here so I don't look like I'm looking off into the air. Um, it's difficult because there's not one main resource that has all these grant opportunities, especially because a lot of them are funded by individual foundations that are private entities. They can kind of do things how they want. So it's a matter of doing funder prospecting, which is another conversation. It's a whole nother topic of its own. We could be here for years teaching and stuff. But funder prospecting, figure out who your foundations are that you want to go after. And then from there, what you do is, I recommend, this is actually a really good tip, write this down, really good tip. Create an email account that is only for grants. Francisco knows this one, I talk about it all the time. Create an email that is just for grants. As you're prospecting, and what I mean by prospecting is looking into different funders of interest, sign up for their newsletters, sign up for their, whatever they're sending out, because they're going to start publishing that information. Now, part of your final grant calendar is going to be to remind yourself that on a weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, whatever, really, I wouldn't say monthly, that's too long. Maybe bi-weekly basis, remind yourself to go through that email, look up the different grants that are coming up, see whether or not you're eligible for them, if they're of interest. And if they are, you're going to move on onto this Excel spreadsheet or a form like this. And then these are one of the activities you're going to do on a bi-weekly basis. So and I'm going to show you, because we do it in GrantSync, we do it inside another website we use called Notion. We have our processes broken down onto a daily, weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, quarterly, every 6 months, and annual basis. So I'm not going to show you all this stuff because it would bore you to death. But we break everything down into steps, right? Because otherwise it's too much stuff to do and there's too many people involved. But that's something that you can do for yourself as well. On a bi-weekly basis, I'm going to go into this grant email and I'm going to see what's up, see what's available. And then that way work it, see whether or not it's good for you. And then you go ahead and throw it on that calendar, throw it on that Excel spreadsheet. Does that make sense? Yes.
Yeah, thank you for those tips. These are great.
Sure.
And I don't want to break this lecture or just go off track. But in order to apply, what are the minimum requirements to have ready to apply for a grant? Is this the business plan or anything status as well?
Yeah, there's a lot. So I can send you an ebook we have. It's called the 28-point checklist. There's like up to 28 possible documents you could need. It's going to be things like your program needs to be drafted up, what you need the money for, budgets, how you're going to spend the money, data to prove that your project works, lists of partnerships. There's a bunch of registrations you need as well. If you're fiscally sponsored, like with the center has all that already done. So you just use theirs.
Okay.
But yeah, there's like 28 potential documents you need. So this is kind of like developing the grant calendar thing is going to be, you could still use the same concepts, and actually I would recommend it even when you're in the initial stages, because that way you're already used to this process. So once you start applying for grants, you're not creating a new process, but there are about up to 28 different documents you would need.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a lot, but it's okay, it's doable. It's totally doable. Awesome. So can you see any other questions about this Excel spreadsheet so far? No? Okay, cool. So let's get out of here. And let's go on to the next topic. So the next thing is I'm going to go through a couple of just bullet points of things to think about as you're developing your grant calendar. One thing is you want to choose a template, or you want to choose a program that you want to use for your grant calendar. For many years, we were teaching about this, we were using Google Calendar. Everybody, I would tell everybody, you have to have Google Calendar. Personally, we've advanced from that, and actually Google Calendar is great as far as sending yourself reminders for things, but I personally don't find it super effective for a grant calendar. The reason being is we all are dependent on our calendars for meetings and for appointments and things like that. To then incorporate all the tidbits that need to be done to have an effective strategy for grant writing, it's way too much and it becomes overwhelming. So what we started using recently was a website called Notion, notion.co, and it's fabulous. And I'm going to show it to you because I'm obsessed. I'm obsessed with it. But before we get into that, one of your first steps is to figure out where you're going to have your calendar. Is it going to be Google Calendar if you want? Is it going to be Notion? Is it going to be somewhere else? Where are you going to have this calendar created? The second thing you want to do is once you have that calendar set up, right? You decided to use a certain calendar. You want to start with reviewing past grants. Don't start with new opportunities. What are all the past grants that you're currently receiving? What are the grants that you want to apply for in the future? Start doing some back end work, right? And look at the opportunities, every single opportunity that your organization has ever received, if you're able to access it. And legally speaking, you should have access to at least 7 years worth of that if you're a large, old enough organization. Look at all the opportunities you've ever received and try to figure out whether or not you're able to apply for that again. Maybe did that relationship, was there something that happened that you can't apply again? Maybe it's been a couple years, you have a new program, you want to reapply, but work those connections first because it's much easier to get grants from organizations that already know you than it is to get grants from new organizations. So that is your absolute number one thing. And that's where most organizations, believe it or not, lose a lot of money because they don't do that. They don't actually go in and work their old connections, right? So I would say to do that first, we review all of those past grants and get that information together to start putting into your calendar. So then the next thing you would do is you would start researching and vetting for new grant opportunities, right? Look up new opportunities. And like I said, looking up grants is a whole nother topic of itself. But if there's like the Miami Foundation, everybody here should be on there. If you're in Dade County, you should be on their list and receiving their newsletters so they can let you know when the grant program opens up. So you want to start researching new grant opportunities and start putting that information into your calendar, which we're going to look at in a little bit. Think about then once you've done that, right? So now let's say you have a list of 10 grants you want to go through for the year, or even if you're starting with one, it doesn't matter. What you're going to do is you're going to look at those grants, look at those due dates, and start comparing it from a 1 year to an 18-month perspective. Compare it with other major events that your organization does. If you know you're going on vacation in July, and there's nobody else that's going to do the grants, and there's a grant that's due in July, maybe you can think about applying for it earlier in the year or later in the year. So be sensitive with yourself. Work with your personal workflow and work with your calendar, right? Because what happens a lot of times is, again, this panic and this craziness that happens when grants comes in, like, oh my God, we have to do this. I have to drop everything in my life to apply for this one grant. And you're kind of setting yourself up for a very bad experience by doing that. So try to look at your the opportunities that you do have available and look at your year to year and a half and see if there are certain months that you just don't have enough staff. Are there certain months that maybe you have kids that are in school and you know that these months you're not going to have time to really focus on that? Maybe there's other times you have more. Like for us internally, the holidays for me is great because that's where it's probably not great, but for me it's great. That's where we work on all the back end stuff. So like literally from Thanksgiving through New Year's, 98% of my time is not working client projects, it's working the company. Because that's the time that I have, and our operations person, Yvonne, she works with me and she has another full-time job in California at a coding school, and she is also available. So what we do is we literally have to plan it the same way. We say, okay, during the holiday time, this is when we're going to do all of our back end stuff. So think about that also as sitting down, because you want to do a good, complete, thorough job of this. So do it when you have free time. Not free time, but you know what I'm saying, when you have a little bit more flexibility of time. You're going to set yourself up for a little bit of success on that. Any questions so far before I keep going on into this? No? Okay.
Yeah, one quick question.
Yeah.
When you say, for example, you set it up for the end of the year, is there a more grant full season in the year from your experience? Is there more grants available to apply for in the first, second, and third quarter than in the fourth quarter? Or how does that really play out? What is the season for example?
Yeah, right. So if it's going to be private funds, if it's going to be foundation funds, I would say it's the beginning of the year, first and second quarter. If it's going to be federal, it can be all over the place. And I've seen a lot of grants, believe it or not, federal towards the end of the year. So most organizations are not applying for federal funding unless you're at a certain level, which you could be. But I would say most of it is towards the beginning of the year. So it's really cool to do this grant calendar, either at the end of the year to the beginning of this next year. So we're in a really good spot right now. You know what I'm saying? Like if you could start, calibrating a calendar, and really you can do this any time of the year, it doesn't matter. I don't want to deter you and say, oh, wait till next year. No. The quicker you can get this done, the better. But like, this is a good time of year to start doing it, because we're going to start seeing opportunities coming up. And if there's a time frame in your calendar as you're planning it out, where you see there's not a lot of things going on, that's actually good because it's a little bit extra time you have to work on more of the planning, the research, vetting of opportunities. So you have to kind of create like a little bit of a balance between the times where you have to apply for the grants, the times you have to do your reporting, and the other times where you might have a little bit more flexibility. Does that make sense? Awesome, awesome. Any other questions so far? No? Okay. So once you've done that, right, we've talked about getting some of these grant opportunities together, the ones that you have applied to before and you want to reapply, get those dates on the calendar. And by I mean that, what I mean about that is like, when are you going to submit the application? You know, when is their board meetings? Any information you have about these old grants, you want to go ahead and put those in the calendar, right? Because here's an, I might have mentioned this already, but if I did, I'm going to repeat myself. Most funding that nonprofits that have been active for a while, most of the funding they lose, or most of the reasons why they don't continue to get renewed funding is because they forget to apply, or they just applied and didn't do it again. You know what I'm saying? Like, it has to do with more of a lack of applying for old funds than anything else. And it happens all the time. I had one organization that their annual budget was, I think, 2.5 million, and they were losing money like crazy. When I came in after a year, they were able to go up in budget by about another $1 million, and most of that was old funds. I would say 85% of that was funds that they had before that they forgot about. Oh, we forgot about this foundation. We haven't heard from them in a while. You know, we didn't reach out to them. And it's like, you know, be consistent. You don't want to harass them, but you want to be consistent. And actually, I'm going to give you another tip. When you're applying to a foundation, a new foundation, we have a 3-step, it's the 3 3s. So 3 3s, what we call it. When you apply to a foundation, let's say Peacock Foundation. Let's say you looked at them, they fit the initiative, you want to apply. Send them a letter, whatever the terms of engagement are on a website, send them a letter, an email, whatever. Wait 3 weeks, repeat it. Wait 3 weeks, repeat it. So you do it 3 times. And that could be email, that could be a phone call, that could be a letter in the mail, just depends. And then if you haven't heard from them, you wait 3 months and you approach them again. So 3, 3, 3, 3, right? Email, phone call, maybe a letter. 3 months later, do it again. Now, if they tell you we're not interested, move on. But just because a foundation doesn't reach out to you in the beginning does not mean that they won't fund you in the future. It could just mean that right now it's not a good time. So again, yes.
Sorry, you mean after you've applied, when they have asked for application, or when you have basically applied cold?
So I would say if it's a new foundation that you're interested in engaging for the first time, or even if it's an old one that you applied to way back when, either way, the first time that you're communicating with them, follow the 3s. Yeah, and some of them, the thing is with the grants too, some of them will say, send us an email. Some of them will say, fill out an online form. Some will say, send us an LOI. Like, the actual terms of engagement are different, but in between communications, you want to have 3 weeks, 3 weeks, 3 weeks, and then 3 months.
3 months.
And so you want to notate this on your calendar. So like, I have an organization now, we have this new thing that we're doing now. It's called Ink Sessions, where it's kind of like what we're doing today, where we're kind of talking through like plans, and we're doing a lot of strategy. So I have one organization, she's amazing, she's an artist, and what she's doing is she's reaching out to a bunch of foundations to fund her art project. So we created these letters, we sent them out, and she marked it in her calendar. In 3 weeks from now, if I haven't heard from them, I'm going to send another email. In 3 weeks from them, if I haven't heard from them, I'm going to make a phone call. If in 3 weeks from there I get nothing, in 3 months I'm going to reach out to them again, because that also hits their quarters, right? Because they have 4 quarters of the year, so do you. So 3, 3, 3, 3.
Right.
I have a question.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
So you mentioned that on the calendar we should put when is the due date and then when you're going to start. Do you have a recommendation of when somebody should start, or a month before? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I'm like you mentioned before, it's always that last minute rush, and
yes.
it's just very stressful.
I know, it's so bad. So I would say
I don't know why it happens. I mean, you know it to do, but I guess you're busy, and then finally you're forced to do it, and then oh my God, I need a collaboration letter. Oh my God, I need this, and then it's horrible.
Yes, yes. So it becomes, and it is, and it's so stressful, right? It's so stressful. So I would say the earlier you can start, the better. If that's 3 months in advance, beautiful. If it's 6 months in advance, why not? I mean, I've done grants at the beginning of the year that I knew we weren't going to apply to until the summer, and I'm already working on it. So as early as you can get it. And I think a way to kind of get started, because the hard part is to kind of get started, and you'll see that over time it'll get easier and easier, but is taking that calendar, that 18-month calendar, and just lay out all the due dates that you know are coming up, and just effortlessly just put them all there and look at it and kind of take like a landscape look of it. You know what I'm saying? And really, and actually I did this for myself once because I'm more of a visual person. So this was back at the center. I printed out 18 months of calendars, literally on paper. And I wrote down everything that we had to do, like our peak times for training programs, our peak time for grant due dates, blah, blah, blah. Because mind you, we manage a lot of grants. And I literally had it visually in front of me. And I was able to see what those certain times of the year were that were peak times, certain times of the year that were low times, and times of the year I wanted to go on vacation, times of the year, you know what I'm saying? Like I was able to do that planning. So kind of just put all that information that you do already have in your current grants or the ones that you want to apply to, and just put it on a calendar. No judgment, whether you apply to or not, doesn't matter. Just get it on the calendar so you can see what it looks like. And then we can start making decisions as to which ones make sense to apply to. Because if you have, let's say in March, you have, let's say a 6-month report due for one, a new grant opportunity for another, and you have 3 other ones you're prospecting. That might be too much work to do in a month, maybe. So maybe what you have to do is make a decision. Yes.
If I can suggest also, because something that Pascal said, this brings up the idea that you mentioned in one of our earlier clinics, is that if you're not applying, but you're researching, from the research, you discover basically what requirements they need. And you look at your corporate documents. If you're not applying, you may be having a chance to, okay, what do they need that I have and that I don't have? If I don't have my articles of incorporation on an electronic format, I have to get them in an electronic format. Whatever it is that I need to prepare for when I do apply, all those back office work that you do to prepare documentation, certifications, insurance forms, whatever they might require, those are the requirements that take time to get last minute.
Yes.
If you have to do that last minute, then you'll be like, oh my God, I only have 2 hours and I gotta get this information. I gotta get this signature from my board, whatever it is, it'll ruin your time, because then that preparation takes no time if you start today.
Yes.
That's a great point. Thank you. I really like that. Like a little folder where you have all those things ready. Yeah, that's great.
Absolutely.
Well, ask Lorinda, she's got a whole clinic about exactly how to get organized.
Yeah.
Those one folder, like 7 folders. You got
It's like 7 folders. Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. No, thank you, Francisco. Thank you, Francisco. Yeah, so that's not one of the things. That's probably something that we do with organizations a lot, and we do other trainings on too, is how to do this, right? So there's a lot. I mean, like I said, that we could be here all day talking about how to do it, but that's a really good point. Is prepping yourself in advance, right? What are the documents you need? Get them into electronic format and save them on a Dropbox folder. That way they're easily accessible. So all those things, those are all the things you would do even before you would start your grant calendar. Make sure your documents are together, make sure they're up to date. And again, on the grant calendar, you want to make a note. For instance, the Department of Agriculture solicitation form, that's a form that expires every year. So when does yours expire? Let's say it expires February 2nd. Make a note in February 2nd of next year or a week before, right? And make a note on there about that you need to, apply for it next year. You need to redo it. Oh, we have a message. Awesome. You see, there we go. We're actually hosting a website that addresses this next Tuesday. Perfect. So I hope you guys come back next Tuesday. I'm going to send that one also. But yeah, getting your stuff in order.
I also had a comment or question. As far as letters of inquiry, I saw on your drop down sheet that was an option, but so sometimes there's no time frame on the letter of inquiry, and there's a handful of organizations that you can start reaching out to. Kind of how do you put that on your calendar? And then I know that's part of the 3 reaching out step, but do you just kind of put that in there when you're doing it and then just move it when you hear back, and just that way? Or
yep. So you're reading my mind. That was actually the next topic. So there are what they call rolling due dates. So the first thing you want to put in are the hard due dates, right? The ones that For the ones like Sarah said that you don't know when to apply, those are good because you can use those as fillers, and you can send them out when it's a lower time, right? So let's say there's a month or a week and you don't have that many applications that are due, you don't have any reports to do, that's the time you want to send out these LOIs and get those out there, right? And then what you do is then from the date that you send it out, that's when you would start to do your 333. So if I sent it out on the 1st, 3 weeks later, another contact, 3 weeks later, like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and then just schedule that into the calendar too as like a
Into the
follow-up for
calendar too.
yourself.
Yep, as a follow-up. Yep, exactly. Exactly.
Lorinda, how relational is this process, or is it simply basically there is a call for application, you apply it to an anonymous email, like an info email or whatever, grants email, or do you recommend to actually get to know the right person at that foundation? If it's a new foundation, how would you
Right.
approach that?
So I would say when it comes to the foundations, especially if it's a local foundation, you should definitely have them get to know you. You know what I'm saying? I think that that's very valuable for them to get to know who you are. So these 333, like the 3 steps, is a way for you to get to know them. So we're not even, these 3 steps may not even be the application. It may just be an email introducing yourself. It may be an email sending them information about what you do, or about how you're serving the community or whatnot. So it's going to be, so it's kind of, that's kind of your way to engage them a little bit, just so that you can get to know them and they can get to know who you are. And also it's interesting, the funders are wonderful people, especially the local ones, like Miami Foundation's amazing, Health Foundation South Florida amazing. A lot of them have attended our workshops, and like they'll say themselves, we're people, like you don't always have to purchase for money, like you can just like communicate with us, and sometimes they can provide you other support besides just financial support. So I think relationship building is very important, in that, so they can really know who you are in the community. And these are some ways, as far as the paper side of things, paper side, so to speak, that you can engage with them, is the 333.
Right. And who would be the role at the foundation? What would you look for?
Probably the grant manager, program manager, community outreach person, someone like that. And don't be afraid to invite them to events. They will show up. If you have an event or something. I mean, it's just kind of weird in COVID, right? But yeah, engage with them. They're people. It's good. It does help. When it comes to the government, it's a whole different ballgame. Like you will eventually learn who the grant managers are, but they award people completely on technical writing. So it's all about the technical side of things. And later on is when you get to know the grant managers. The foundations are different. They're a little bit more personable. They're a little bit more approachable. So they kind of want to know who you are as a person and as an organization. So good questions. Okay. So we talked a little bit about filling in those rolling deadlines, right? And it's something that you want to apply to, like put in, if you have an LOI that's due, or an application that's due, something where you don't have like a hard due date, but you know that it's open, and then you'll see it'll say rolling deadlines. You want to put those into your calendar on low times, right? When you don't have a lot of other things to do. Another tip to give you really quickly is to be realistic about the opportunities you're going to go for. Don't put on your calendar, I mean, maybe you could, who knows, but that you're going to do 20 applications in a month. That may be a little bit much. Think about what you're capable of doing, and think about your team, right? Who's on your team? Who supports you? Who's around? Are you doing it by yourself? Do you have other people around? And what I find too, especially in organizations that are dealing with that have multiple people on staff, they stress out their staff. The staff gets stressed out because it's too much to do at the last minute. So be conscientious of that. And plan out your activities. Throw everything on the calendar, and then don't be afraid to say, this month is a little too much going on. We already have our annual fundraising event. We have a big community project going on. Maybe this month we'll do the basic grant writing stuff, but let's not actually force our staff to run the program this month and do a grant. Maybe we can move it to next month, because your staff is super important. Yes, Sensei.
No question. I was just adjusting the lamp.
Oh yeah. Oh, you raise your hand. Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, you don't want to overstress your staff. That's not going to help. We need them. So that's another tip. And then the last thing I'll say about this, and I'm going to show you what Notion looks like, is that a grant calendar is not a stagnant document. A grant calendar is not, oh, it's done and that's it. No, this is something that's always a living document, is what I like to call it, that's constantly going to be updated and upgraded and updated as you go on, right? COVID happened, let me tell you, all of our grant calendars went right out the window, but that's okay. That's part of being a resilient organization, right? So just know that your grant calendar is your friend. It's something that you're going to update on a regular basis. but it's at least a nice solid place that you can put your information and work on it on a consistent basis. Does that make sense? Awesome. So now, is there any other questions before I start showing you a little bit of what Notion looks like? No? Okay. So I am going to show you Notion. I'm actually going to show you what ours looks like internally, because that way you don't see client information, but you can see what it looks like. Okay, can you see that? Does that show or you see my desktop? Yep. Okay. So this is Notion.so. I think will be wonderful. We have a little bit of time. It's already 3 o'clock. But if everybody could go to this website, Notion.so, and go ahead and create an account for me. And we're gonna start playing with this. So it's Notion.so. Give a couple minutes. Share for 1 second. So I'm gonna take my video off for 1 second. I need to plug it in, but I will be here if you have any questions. Okay, sorry about that. So how's everybody doing with creating the profile? Any trouble? I'll send links. Yeah, I'll send links as well to everyone, but I think it'll be fun if we can kind of play with it together so we can see how this works.
Is there a calendar we should be looking for in here?
No, you have a blank slate. Yep. You have a blank slate.
It reminds me of an app called HyperCard back in the 90s. That used to basically, yeah. But like a database blank slate, like a database Excel.
So what I like about Notion.co.so, and again, there's other websites that do it. This is free. It's a free website. You can create a workspace and have up to 3 people on it, which I think is really good. It's completely customizable and pretty simple to customize. And you can start creating your own calendars, checklists, a bunch of things. So I'm going to show you what a lot of this looks like on our end so that you can see what it is. And I'm going to show you a calendar. It's not a grants calendar, but it's a general calendar. And I'm going to show you how it works so you can see more or less what you could do with this. But what's interesting is that we've, like I said before, we've really used a lot of different programs. We were using Google Docs for a while. We used Google Calendars. and all the dings and all this stuff, it just became too much. Really, what I think is the most beneficial when creating a grants calendar is having some kind of project management tool, where you can have a calendar that you see visually, you can see what the dates are, and you can add in tasks that should be done on a regular basis. What I like about this one is it's not going to ding to your email every 5 seconds, but you can set it up that way if you choose to. Because again, when you're dealing with your programs and you're working with your people and you're working with your staff, and now you have 8,000 tasks to do for the grant stuff, it's too much. Instead, what I recommend doing is creating, depending on how, again, this is going to depend on your team, create time blocks in your calendar, in your personal work calendar, for you to work on grant stuff. So that's another thing that we do as well is we have multiple and let me show you that too while you guys are opening that up. We have has anybody used Calendly before? Let me show you
To
this.
make appointments, yeah, currently to make appointments with other
Make
people.
appointments. So the way that my team gets a hold of me is that they have access to my calendar, because otherwise I'm always doing something and they yell at me. So let me show this to you while we work on that. So not saying you guys have to create a calendar, but we have, this is our Grants Inc. calendar. So these are the different types of calls and client check-ins and things like that we do. But one of them, which is check-in tasks, this one specific, this is literally a time block that our operations person has access to. And whenever she needs me to do something, or if there's some kind of back end work that I need to do, she'll literally send me a calendar invite, and a block comes out in my personal calendar for me to do the work. So like she has one for me today. I think it's at 4:30 to 5:30. So from 4:30 to 5:30, I know that there's work that I have to do. She notated it, right? And she'll say back end office stuff or whatever. From there, what do? I go into notion.co. I look at our checklist of to do things, and I focus my time on all those checklists of things to do, and I'm able to get things done. So this is something I do recommend that you could do as well, is carve out time on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, block off an actual, an hour if you need it, however long you need to work on these grant activities, to work on the grant calendar, so that way you're consistently accomplishing the different tasks that you need to accomplish to keep moving forward. Does that make sense? Yeah, cool. That's the only way I can manage. So how's everybody doing with logging into Notion?
No, we're there. Just
Yeah.
looking at the settings and details and
Okay, cool. So I'm going to show you, let me screen share again so you can see what some of this looks like. Um, so I'm going to show you Grants Inc.'s calendar. Um, can you see it all? Can you see it pretty good? Okay.
yes.
So you wouldn't need anything this extensive. This is a very robust thing. This is what we actually did over the holidays, was create this. The way that Notion works is all these pages are customizable, they're movable, and you're able to put all of your information into one place. Big tip of the this grant calendar, um, incorporates not only due dates of when you plan on doing things, but also checklists of what tasks have to be done. You want it to be in one place, because if it's not, you're never going to do it. You're never going to, you know what I'm saying? You're going to lose information. So we have everything here. So we have our different tasks, which is based on our, on our organizational structure. But let me show you a couple of really cool pages that we created. So we have this one that is check-ins, and we break it down by dates, right? And we break it down by dates, all the different check-ins that we have. And then if you were to go in here, you're gonna see here that there's like check boxes, so you can actually check and uncheck tasks. Does that make sense? So this is really cool because you're creating yourself little check-ins. So this is something that you're able to do on Notion. You're also able to have objectives, right? So we have our quarterly objectives, quarter 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. And we have listed within the pages what our objectives are. This is what you can do for your grants as well. What are your objectives? What grants do you want to apply to this month, next month? What are your goals for the year? How much money do you need to bring in? What programs need to be funded, etc. All those planning activities are cool, and it's nice to put into a place like this, because then you can actually find them again, right? And then let me show you the physical calendar. Again, this is kind of a blank calendar because this is a personal one that I have set up, but let me show this to you. Okay, so we have here a calendar, right? And I'm going to create one for you so you could see it. This is a great tool because you can create a calendar like this, something like this, right? And this will be your grant calendar. And then what you would do is, let's say we're looking at January, right? And we know that on February 1st, there's a grant that's coming out. We would go in here and we would write down, let's say, the name of the grant. Let's say it's the Peacock Foundation, right? Right. And then we could say it's going to be on the 1st. And then what is it that we're going to do? We're going to start drafting letter of intent. If you have other people working with you, you could put the little @ sign and then they can be added to it and they would get a ding in their email saying that this, that this task was put in. And then we would just, that would be it. We'd send it, right? So when we get out of here, now we have that listed, right? So what I would highly recommend that you do is, remember I had said a year to 18 months. You can do it in any calendar app that you like. Again, I like Notion quite a bit, but you could literally create the calendar and I'll show you how to create one and start filling it out and literally start filling it out. Step 1, all your past funders or funders that you know you're going to apply to again this year. When are the applications due? When were they due last year? And then start backtracking. So I know that if this grant, let's say the grant is due February 1st, I should have started writing it 2 to 3 weeks before. Does that make sense to everybody? Am I pretty clear on this? I don't want to confuse.
Completely clear.
Yeah. Okay, good, good. So you want to put in those hard due dates. Thank you, Francisco. Put in those hard due dates and then say, okay, this is when they're all due. Let me backtrack and give myself 3 weeks time to start prepping for that grant application. So you want to do that all the way through. Again, all the way through 18 months. I know it seems like a lot of work, but it's going to help you a lot. And then what you can do is look at the calendar and say, or figure out whether or not it makes sense. Can I actually do all this? Because once you put it on paper, once you see it, you can decide whether or not it actually makes sense to do that. So let me stop sharing. Okay, any questions before I create a calendar for you? Yes.
So how do you integrate your Excel spreadsheet that you showed before with your 4 quarters and then this? You keep those separate or?
So I keep them separate. I keep them separate, and the reason I do is the Excel spreadsheet I find is better when I'm sharing information with outside stakeholders. So, like for instance, if you want to share with your board, you don't want to share this with your board because this is too much detail. But you may want to share with the board of directors the general Excel spreadsheet, right? And this will be more comprehensive in that it'll have not just your hard due dates, but it'll also have your own personal work due dates when you want to start working on things. So that I would keep internally, but then like the final numbers, when you got approved, what the grant application is, what your return on investment is, because we do that as well. Like how much, how many grants did you apply to and what percentage was approved, what percentage was denied. That I would keep separate on that Excel spreadsheet because that's something that you could share to the board directors, to staff and whatnot. This is more like personal time management. So you can really see what's the best way to build it out. So you can manage your own time.
Lorinda, if I just mentioned something interesting that I kind of piqued my ear,
Yeah.
ROI. How do you calculate ROI on a nonprofit activity? How do you calculate ROI? I mean, that's something I can send you by email so you can help me educate me as to how to really do that, because that would be a metric besides the regular metrics to really provide the use of funds. We're efficiently using our funds or we're inefficiently using our funds.
Right. Good point. So there's a document by the Better Business Bureau that kind of talks about how much you should spend on fundraising, on how much you should spend on staff and things like that. So that kind of helps you determine that a little bit. When it comes to ROI, the way that I would say it is that for us, from an ethical perspective, there's fees, obviously, right, to hire us to do this work, but we're very conscientious of what those fees are and what's in relation to the grant money that's coming in. Because if you're spending more money on us than you are the support that's coming in, then it doesn't kind of make sense, right? So we tend to look at that quite often especially for board directors, because they're the ones making the decisions whether or not to spend the money on grant writers. So in order to help justify that and to really have a non-biased look at what it looks like, we'll calculate the ROI. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yep, absolutely. So let's go back to our screen share. So okay, so again, this is the calendar, and like I said, step one, hard due dates. When you know things are due. Then what you want to do is backtrack, right? So 3 weeks, this is due here. 3 weeks before, I want to start drafting the letter of intent. 2 weeks before, I want to, let's say, give it to a colleague to review it so that the week before it's due, I'm actually sending it out. Then once the letter goes out, then you want to make a note of it. Letter went out, and then calculate 3 weeks in advance. That in 3 weeks, I'm going to check in with the funder. And then if I didn't hear from them 3 weeks, I'm going to check in with them again. And you kind of do it like that. And you're going to see it's going to fill up super fast. The calendar is going to fill up super fast. Any thoughts, ideas?
I mean, does this integrate in any way with existing like iCal other things? Because I mean, I already integrate my ecosystem of apps pretty well, and
Yeah.
adding another layer, I understand it's a centralized, wonderful way, but is there a way to seamlessly kind of upload things or synchronize apps like iCal? If I already have a grants calendar there synced with tasks and reminders and
Right.
emails and things.
You could. So it's kind of going to depend a little bit on your personal workflow. Um, because there's going to be like due dates of like hard due dates that need to be communicated with everybody within your organization. There's also going to be other stuff that's kind of like how you're managing your own personal time. Now, I'm really big and I'm not great at it, but I'm always trying to create time blocks in my personal calendar so that there's a work life balance, because of the this type of stuff is never ending work. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So depending on how you want to manage your own personal time, if you're comfortable with putting all these individual little tasks onto your personal calendar, by all means you could do so. But for me, I like to keep them separate. And then what I do is I just have the routine that every single day, part of my work day, is I go on here to see what's going on. And then I, kind of go from there. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. So I know this is super complex. Creating the grand calendar is not the easiest thing in the world, but I hope I gave you at least some ideas and concepts related to it. These are things that it's part of what I hope to build more trainings on, and part of, we have this new thing called ink sessions where we do one-on-ones, whether it's with me, our budgeter, our researcher, or our operations person who's the one that literally created our entire system that you see here today. So if you ever need any help with it, feel free to reach out to us. We can help you with it. But my idea was to at least give you some ideas of some thoughts related to building a calendar. Remember, the whole thing is about backtracking. Put those hard due dates in there, the stuff that's not movable. Take a unbiased look at it, and then start to plan things around those due dates, around your vacations, around when your kids are out of school. You know what I'm saying? Like, you want to live, you want to have a life, right? So the one of the first steps is again that to really get the hard due dates on the calendar, and then just start backtracking. And then whenever you do reach out to an organization, remember the three threes. So you reach out to a foundation, 3 weeks later, you follow up again. 3 weeks later, you have your third follow up. And 3 months later, you start the process over again. So, yes, I hope that was useful. Hi, yes.
Yes, this was all really great. I wonder if you have any recommendations on kind of clinics of grant writings. Like, how do you know if why you didn't get the grant? Maybe your LOI is not strong enough, or there's parts of your organization that funders don't like, or whatever.
Right,
So
right.
who can give you this kind of feedback? Because I don't think the funders give any feedback if they
Yeah.
don't give you the money, right?
Right. Sometimes they will. Sometimes they will. You can ask them for feedback. So after you submit a grant application, you can ask them. They'll give it to you. Sometimes they don't. We do trainings pretty often. So with the center, we're doing one every month. I think the next one is the 18th of February. That are on all kinds of things. We also have an online school called Grants Inc. University. I can send you the link. So we have some online courses. There are a couple of websites like. You can look up nonprofit training. Foundation Directory Online is another really good one that'll have some information about it. We're really big on education and training. That's like my thing. I mean, like, it's so much. There's so much to all this, um, but yeah, there's a lot to it. But you'll get it little by little.
Yes, I'd like to get
Yeah,
any links that you could share to
yeah,
your
absolutely.
academy as well. That'd be great.
Perfect. Perfect. Yeah, we'll send you a follow-up email once we get the registration link. We'll send you a follow-up email. It'll come from Rachel. She's our development associate, and then whatever you need from her, let her know, and she'll get it, or she'll get it from me. And then if anybody has any questions, like comments, I'll be here for another few minutes. If you ever want to set up a call and chat about like what yours, because for me, I like structure and organization. Some of my favorite things about grant writing is actually not the application process. It's all this helping you create internal systems. So if that's ever something that you guys need guidance on, that's one of the things that we do as well pretty often. So we're around.
Awesome. Thank you
Thank
very,
so-
very much.
Yeah,
Thank
that was
you.
great. Okay. I'll take you up on that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Any resources you need, let us know. We're here to help. So
Okay. And we'll get some
Any
of this
reference?
information. Post. We'll get some of this, like some of the things that you use. We'll get it in email.
Yep. And
Okay.
then when you get the email from Rachel, feel free to respond to her. And if there was anything specific that you're looking for, or anything specific that I mentioned that you wanted or whatever, she has access to everything, and she can send you copies.
Okay.
So
Perfect. All right. This was great. Thank you.
awesome. Thank you so
Indeed,
much.
indeed.
Nice to see you
Take care.
all.
See you soon. Same.
Take care.
Back to everyone.
Thanks.
Lorinda, I wonder if I
Yes.
can ask you another question.
Sure.
If you're here for another few minutes.
Absolutely.
What would you shoot for in terms of operating budget if you just start out? I mean, it depends on your programs, obviously, but just for admin, like a website, admin, reporting, probably one person in the back end in the office.
Yeah.
That,
I mean, it's, there's some people that really run their nonprofits on a bare bones budget, and they have a lot of like volunteer, or the director was doing kind of like everything. So it kind of depends. I mean, like I've seen people that have zero budget and they're still running, and I've seen people that have, $100,000 luckily, and they're running. So it kind of just depends. It kind of just depends on, what you have, where you are, and how you can just, grow from it.
and in the beginning, would you recommend to do the fiscal sponsorship to just see how it goes, and then maybe after a year decide whether you incorporate?
Yep, I would absolutely, without a doubt. It's one of the best programs, and the way the center has it set up, it's very seamless. It works really well, and the center themselves have all the background, all the history. There's a lot of support and training. It's like an easier way. Like even myself, we were recently talking about us opening a nonprofit to focus more on the training side of things, so we could then hopefully bring costs down and all those things. And like for me, I would do it through the center as well. So I definitely recommend it. Yep, and there's Luli's email on the bottom. She's the one that. She's the mastermind behind it. Her and I work together a lot. So
she'll be happy to sit, hop on a call with you and explain in more detail, because there's kind of different layers to that.
Yeah, I'll definitely reach out to her. Great. Well, it's been so helpful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was good to see you.
Thank you and good luck to you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.